Hey everybody, welcome to the show, Around the Nation, right here, TYT Nation. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. Oh man, we got a fun show for you guys today. So we've got some interesting news, some fun news, some I'm going to beat up on Democrats, I'm going to beat up on Republicans. Mostly I'm going to beat up on Donald Trump. That's going to be fun. We've got some really fun stories when it comes to that, including a very interesting poll. Who is more unpopular, United Airlines or the President of the United States? You're going to love the answer. You're going to love it. You'll have some fun here. Then we've got draining the swamp. Is Donald Trump draining the swamp? We've got an answer for you. And then is our president just really dumb, or is there something wrong with him? I don't know. We'll look at the evidence and we'll go from there. Then we have Claire McCaskill, switching over to the Democrats. I'm going to beat up on them for a while. We got Claire McCaskill going after free college tuition. That's a bad move, especially if you actually want to win re-election. I'm going to go after her on that. And then we have a Democratic challenger for Heidi Heitkamp. Who is this person that is going after Heidi Heitkamp from the left? And are they a progressive? Interesting. It's an interesting question. Interesting show. Again, we're going to have some fun. It's Thursday. I will not be here tomorrow. I have meetings tomorrow. Once a month, I have to take a Friday to do meetings, business stuff. So that's what I'm doing tomorrow. Just so everybody knows, I'll put it up on Patreon as well, the announcement of what's going on in my schedule, so nobody gets to miss. So everybody is caught up on everything, so nobody gets confused. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody knows what's going on. One Friday a month, I do have to take. I do have to do these meetings. So, we'll see about maybe getting some content up tomorrow, but I can't guarantee it. All right. Anyway, there's that. There's the announcements. There's the breakdown. We've got some patrons that I want to shout out to. That are new today. Let's see, or new yesterday that I didn't get a chance to talk about. I know we had a huge show yesterday. We went massively over time, so I did not get to doing these shout outs. So let me do that now. Let me bring that up. We have Benjamin S pledging. Thank you, Sharon E, and then we have Jim T. So thank you. 3 of you. Another, again, patron, why it's so important is, again, we have not been demonetized, but at the same time, we have been de facto demonetized for the most part. Now, what do I mean by that? Our revenue is nowhere close to what it used to be, despite getting a massive amount of views. Just the other day, the most recent postings, I believe on the 18th, we had nearly 100,000 views, which is a fairly significant amount of money. The amount of revenue, and I can't give you specifics, turns out I'm actually not supposed to do that when it comes to the terms of service, so oops. Let's just say my revenue was not impressive at all, and nowhere near close to what it used to be. So while there still are ads being shown on our channel, they're nowhere near the level of what they used to be. So that's why Adpocalypse, that's why I say it's still going on, and that's why we still need your help. So I still want to get to 1,500. That is the magic number. We are not quite there yet. But 1,500, as I said, is where I will never have to worry about anything when it comes to the show. Everything is taken care of, and we'll even be able to begin to expand a little bit and do some extra stuff, which is what I eventually want to continue to do, is want to grow the show, get bigger. I'd actually like to hire people too. I want to be a job creator. So, and that means hiring people like editors and, people that do production, producers, and maybe even a co-host. That'd be awesome. So we can give you more content. My dream is to eventually, of course, have a first hour where it's just me, and then bring in a co-host for a second hour of content. Hosted by them, co-hosted by me. That is the eventual goal that I want to get to. That's why, of course, I want to raise a lot of money enough money to be able to employ another person. So that's why, again, I'm concerned about revenue, and I'm really pushing this Patreon, because that's eventually, that's a couple years down the road, but I want to make that an eventual reality. So, and your help is gonna let me be able to do that. So again, that's the plan. Okay, anyway, so let's get into some of the stories. We'll have some fun here. Oh, by the way, since it is Thursday, normally I'm here on Fridays. I'm not here tomorrow. We will open up the lines up to your questions, 796-4975 or TYT Nation on Skype. So go ahead, you know, in the stories, like, well, I'll give you a call, or give me a call. Give me a call. You'll give me a call. And you can ask your question, comment, or whatever. So that's what I want to do. If I'm in the middle of a story, just hang on the line. I will get to you because I see it. So all that stuff. Okay. Anyway. Oh, yeah. Happy 420. For a second, I almost blanked out in there. It is 420. Now what's interesting about that is, and it's actually super sad, is that yes, it is 420, but there's a recent memo from the Department of Homeland Security that is still putting out the old reefer madness tropes. Okay, so this was posted earlier today in The Hill. Memo to Homeland Security: marijuana is not a gateway drug. Science says so. So I love this. I love it already because it's actually a factual article. They're saying, no. All you're doing, you politicians, you're saying that it's a gateway drug. That's not actually backed up by scientific reality and or facts. It's just not backed up by anything. So John Kelly, which is the Homeland Security Secretary, says marijuana is a dangerous gateway drug that frequently leads to use of harder drugs. That's actually not correct. It's been shown that marijuana actually helps people get off of opiates, which are harder drugs. So it does the opposite. It actually helps people get off of the much harder heroin. And it's also good for pain. So, I mean, the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Justice, they are wrong. They are anti-science. But again, we have Jefferson Beauregard Sessions the fucking third, who's out there saying the same old reefer madness crap, and he actually promises to get harder on weed. But see, this is the problem, right? Is that this goes against the majority of Americans. And again, it goes after the science. More than half of American adults have tried cannabis, according to data compiled by the Center for Disease Control. Statistically, the overwhelming majority of these individuals who try marijuana never go on to try another illicit substance. An empirical reality that persuaded investigators at the Rand Corporation to conclude, quote, marijuana has no causal influence over hard drug initiation. And again, I referenced a study earlier where marijuana has been proven to actually help people get away from heroin, harder drugs. So, again, and they mentioned that in this article. But of course, in jurisdictions where marijuana use is legally regulated, researchers have reported year-over-year declines in opioid-related abuse, hospitalizations, and mortality. You know how many people die from marijuana? None. Dick. Nada. Zero. Overall, the study's investigation concludes states with medical cannabis laws have had a 24.8% lower mean annual opioid overdose mortality rate compared to with states without medical cannabis laws. Other studies have reported similar declines in the use of other drugs in jurisdictions where cannabis access is legally permitted. So, all of this scientific evidence showing that marijuana is not the harmful gateway drug that it has been portrayed to be, it doesn't seem to be affecting the judgment of people like John Kelly, or Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, which again sounds like the villain in a slavery movie or in a Civil War movie. I mean, come on. All these different studies, all this different scientific evidence, and they do not look at it. And for public opinion, fewer than 1 in 3 U.S. citizens agree with the statement of the use of marijuana leads to the use of hard drugs. Among those respondents under the age of 65, fewer than 1 in 4 agree with that statement. That's because they have experience with it. They know it's not true. They didn't grow up in the era of reefer madness, which you notice people over 65 are like, ooh, got to stay away from that devil's lettuce. It's bad for you. It's going to make you murder someone, which literally, that's what they said it would do. It's amazing. Both scientific and public opinion reject the notion that marijuana use promotes the use of other hard drugs. It's time that our government catches up to the will of the people and not the will of the paper industry, which would be hurt by hemp production, by the pharmaceutical industry that is going to be hurt by medical marijuana. It's about time, instead of our public officials listening to those people who hand them all sorts of money, who give them checks, it's about time they start listening to us, the American people, or we're going to get rid of them. We're going to vote them out. So, on that, happy 420. Okay. Anyway, so let's move on. Let's get into the national story, or the other story here. What's more unpopular than United Airlines? Well, it turns out it's the President of the United States. Now, according to a new poll, registered voters now have a higher opinion of United Airlines, which recently faced a backlash after forcibly removing a passenger from one of its flights, than President Trump. Interesting. 42% in a new survey out from public policy polling say they prefer the airline United to Donald Trump, while only 40% favor Trump instead. Now, I love polls like these because they're fun. Now, remember, United had been in a lot of trouble lately. They're dragging people off flights, overbooking, letting scorpions on the plane. Yes, somebody found a scorpion on a plane that ended up stinging a passenger while he was eating. That actually happened. And then they blame the passengers for all this. Oh, no, it was his fault. It was unruly. That guy probably brought the scorpion on it just to make us look bad. Unruly. Unruly passenger. Yet that airline seems to be more popular than the President of the United States. That's fascinating. Now, let me give you some of the numbers from this poll. Now, pollsters found generally negative attitudes towards United, with 47% viewing it unfavorably. 23% see the airline favorably. Public policy polling discovered Trump fares worse than United, with 52% of respondents considering him unfavorable and 43% favorable. Hilarious. United was ranked in the survey as America's worst airline, with 40% putting it at the bottom of the list. 37% picked something else, while 10% said American, 8% said Southwest, and 6% responded with Delta. Interesting. So I think I have some choices to make who I want to fly with when I go out to LA. Now, the poll, again, this is hilarious because it puts a president in the United States versus an airline. So, now, I have something that's sort of related to that. And that's, do you guys remember Trump Airlines? The Trump shuttle? Technically, I don't, because I was like 6 when it came out. But nonetheless, they actually wrote about this. Now, this was written in the Boston Globe. And it shows the disaster that was Trump Air. When Donald Trump's new airline, the Trump shuttle, was launched on a summer day in 1989, tuxedoed waiters with white gloves passed out smoked salmon, honey chicken skewers, and chocolate truffles. Of course, you would expect that from a Trump affair, okay? It was early in the day, but champagne flowed at Logan Airport. All right. So, he continues. After a string quartet rested its bows, Trump took the microphone and struck a discordant tone. Are you ready for this? This is classic Trump. He railed against Pan Am, his rival in the shuttle business. He suggested Pan Am's flights were unsafe, that the company was strapped for cash and couldn't spend as much to maintain their planes as Trump's shuttle could. Quote, I'm not criticizing Pan Am, I'm just speaking facts. So does that sound familiar at all? Failing Pan Am, what a disaster. They're crashing all the time. They're crashing right now. They don't have the money. They don't have the money. We got, you know who's got the money? We've got the money to make our plans safe. Trump Air. Look at that smoked salmon. That is the best smoked salmon that you have ever seen in your life. Oh my God. I could see it now, man. Now, the article continues. Executives at Trump's newest venture were aghast. In a highly competitive business, one in which Trump has no experience, and again, this sounds incredibly familiar. No experience. Talking shit. The new boss had tossed decorum to the wind and made claims he had no evidence to support. That right there, 2016 in a nutshell. I'm just saying. Now, Henry Hartfeld, who was the company's marketing director, for a short time at least, said, Donald, don't ever do that again. It was wrong. We had no proof to back that up. Oh, the parallels. These are fucking amazing. I love this. There's an unwritten rule in the airline business that you don't attack someone else's safety record. There, but for the grace of God, go I. Oh my. So, look, what happened to Trump Air? Well, according to the Globe, Trump's own airline was struck by a near tragedy within its first 3 months, when the nose gear failed on one of its jets and forced a crash landing at Logan. Oh, that is an ironic disaster. Sadly, it seems to be very typical of Donald Trump's record. And going back to the poll, it seems like a lot of people are starting to notice that his record is less than stellar, especially within the first 100 days. Look, this, like, again, we're less than 100 days in, and he's already the most deeply unpopular president. Okay? Like, and this shows that some of his supporters are starting to turn away from him. He's at 35% approval rating in some polls. And with the strikes on Syria and threatening Korea, North Korea, I should say, I don't think that 35% is going to be around for that long. See, a lot of Americans, they voted for him because at least they were like, well, hey, he's not going to get us into a conflict. He's not going to get us into a war. Uh-oh. He might be getting us into a war. It might be with North Korea. And already we've got troops in Syria and we're doing attacks in Syria. And by the way, we're also dropping $300 million bombs on Afghanistan. We're flattening 1 mile stretches of Afghanistan. I thought you said you weren't going to do that. A lot of his supporters were like, I don't want to go to war. I don't want to attack other countries. I want to focus on America. We have significant problems here. You pointed that out. We got to take care of our people first. Nope, looks like now that the media loves it when Donald Trump goes to war and Donald Trump attacks people, it says, oh my God, he's so presidential, which by the way makes me absolutely sick when the media lauds him for attacking other people. Well, look at that. I guess I'm going to keep doing it because look at the media. They love me. Oh, what? The voters don't love me? Oh, well, sad day. That's what's going on here. Look, most Americans do not have an appetite for conflict, despite corporate media, again, beating the war drums, as I mentioned. This idiot loves it when the corporate media praises him. They called him, I mean, Fareed Zakaria, Brian Williams, they called him presidential. They called him presidential because he finally discovered the joy of bombing brown people. That's what's going on here. Now, his core group of voters, they don't want him to do that. They want him, the only thing they wanted him to do policy-wise, foreign policy-wise, is to beat ISIS, right? That was the main thing. You know, and he said, we're going to beat ISIS. We're going to beat ISIS within the first 30 days. Did that happen? Nope. Oops. Sad. with all this going on, it is not a stretch to see him in the future dropping into the low 20s. And normally, during a presidential cycle, it takes years to get this low. And President Obama dropped down to, what, 37%? But it was like 4 years into his term. Usually, normally, during the first 100 days, that's when you're getting the most stuff done. It's when you got the most political capital. Things are riding high. When Donald Trump came in, the most unpopular president in United States history. And you know what's funny? That says a lot about the competition that he had in this race. If that guy could win, look at the person who lost. Sad. Now, one thing United and Donald Trump have in common, other than low poll numbers, is they're both getting in a lot of trouble, or have gotten in some trouble, for dragging people out. Trump getting people dragged out of his rallies, United getting passengers dragged out of their airlines, off their planes. Now, United might be able to fix their reputation someday. But Donald Trump, I don't really think there's a whole lot that's going to pull his ass out of the fire. Sad. Okay. Oh, boy. All right. Let's have another fun story here, and then we'll get to something more serious. Corruption. Again, the stories may seem a little frivolous today, but God damn it, I'm going to have a little bit of fun. So, and I hope you guys have fun too. Donald Trump seems to have forgotten the name of somebody who's actually fairly important. There was a recent speech in Wisconsin where he was touting his Buy American bill, which, okay, that's great. I support that. But during this whole thing, he seemed to have a problem remembering the name of a colleague that he had worked extensively within on the healthcare bill. Now, let me show you a video of that, and then we'll make fun of him.
He could not be here today. My thanks go to Speaker Ryan, who's represented this city for nearly 2 decades in Congress. And you know where he is? He's with NATO. And so he has a good excuse. And I said, Ron, make sure these countries start paying their bills a little bit more. You know, they're way, way behind, Ron. We have to do, I'm going to talk to you about that, Ron. But Paul, you're over with NATO, get them to pay their bills. I think that, and Ron, you have to work on that too.
Oops. So that's fun. Hey, Ron, we're going to take care of NATO. You too, Ron. I mean, Paul. I mean, Ron. Sorry. If only Ron were here. Look, what's funny is that he worked with Paul Ryan extensively on the healthcare bill. So again, he should know who Paul Ryan is. Okay, maybe we're being a little harsh on him, but as I'm going to point out, this is kind of a pattern. There is some chance that our president is kind of mentally absent. Now, wait a minute, Jeff. That's not nice. Okay, that's actually rude. That's mean. You're just being mean to be mean. You're being an asshole to be an asshole. Well, no, I've got some good evidence. At least I think it's compelling. Now, recently the president was asked about North Korea. Now, this is something that he should know about, especially since we're having some tensions in the area. Okay, there's some tension with North Korea. So it would be important to know who you might be negotiating or possibly attacking. Now, he said on this, you know, they've been talking with this gentleman for a long time. You read Clinton's book. He said, oh, we made such a great peace deal, and it was a joke. You look at different things over the years with President Obama. Everyone has been outplayed. They've all been outplayed by this gentleman. And we'll all see what happens. But I just don't telegraph my moves. You don't telegraph your moves because you probably don't know what the hell you're doing. Or even who you're talking about. Now, Clinton, in his book, talked about Kim Jong-il. Now, Kim Jong-il, he's dead. He was like the Mandelas. They're gone. There's no more Mandelas. Actually, there is. Or at least there was. But I'm referencing an old Bush quote, obviously. No, look. Kim Jong-il, gone. The leader of North Korea is Kim Jong-un. It's not the same gentleman that he was referring to. Which, again, that's not really the best word that I would use for Kim Jong-un either. So, kind of unbelievable, or should I say unbelievable. And yes, I love that pun. It never gets old. Now, how about, and this is fun. It's another little thing taken by itself. Wouldn't be much of an issue, but maybe adds to a growing trend of our president being a forgetful dumbass. How about when he forgot to put his hand over his heart during the national anthem? Watch. Sorry. I love that. Everything's more fun when you slow it down. Good thing that Melania was actually there. She's like, hey, dumbass. Oh, yeah, right. Again, look, not huge by itself, obviously, but this is a growing trend. He just seems to not be there mentally, okay? And look, you might be like, come on, dude, you're nitpicking. He's a human. He makes mistakes. There's a pattern. There's a pattern. Now, remember, during the Trump Care debacle, he actually said this as well.
It's an unbelievably complex subject. Nobody knew that healthcare could be so complicated.
Nobody knew healthcare would be so complicated, except everybody knew it was complicated. Everybody who's not an idiot. Come on, man. Look, he seems to not understand the limits of his office or his own power or anything related to policy. And of course, you go back to the recent reports, or a few weeks ago, all the reports and leaks in Politico, where they said, look, this guy, he doesn't pay attention. He doesn't have a very long attention span. He likes maps and pictures, and he likes policy pages that are like a page. That he doesn't have a stack of policy papers, and he doesn't really pay attention in meetings, and he gets bored and gets shiftless, and he wants to watch TV 6 hours a day, and it's normally Fox News. And this is somebody who even seems to get confused and bored and even having trouble reading. Come on, man. This is not somebody who's an intelligent person. Okay? No matter how much he says.
And then they say, "Is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person."
No matter how much he says that doesn't make it true. That doesn't make it true. Look, not only that, he speaks at a third grade level, and we know that. And constantly meanders. He goes to different topics. He starts talking about completely random things, bringing up his poll numbers and whatever, how big his inauguration was. This is not somebody who knows what they're doing. This is not somebody who knows what they're talking about. Okay? He doesn't even handle policy questions very well. He's very vague. There's almost no specifics in what he talks about. Everything is great. It's fantastic. Or if it's bad, it's always a disaster and sad. Look, our president is either a complete moron or maybe there's something wrong with him. I don't know. I'm not going to... Look, probably going to get in trouble for even bringing this up, but this guy might have something mentally off with him. If so, well, that's not a good thing if you're a president. And look, maybe he was just a dumb person. Maybe he's just not a smart person to begin with, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around the fact that the Electoral College and the Republican Party chose a complete idiot to run the entire United States of America, to run the country. And there's a part of me that feels bad for doing this segment. Like, I feel bad for him in a way, because either he's out of his league or he's just, I don't know, he's dumb, or there's something wrong with him. I don't know. All I know is that he doesn't belong in the White House. And the logical part of me thinks that it doesn't matter Because while he's in office, he's a danger to the world and to the United States. I mean, Syria, North Korea, climate change, his policies, this man's idiocy is a danger to us all. Already he's flattened a 1 mile square radius of Afghanistan with a bomb. He shot 59 missiles at an airbase, and we didn't even destroy it under his order. I mean, come on, man. We're 100 days in, and he's already shown that he is not only an idiot, but he is a dangerous idiot. He's got to go. I mean, this is not sustainable. I do not think he is going to last. He is way in over his head. And it shows. And it shows. I got a little heavy there. A little. But again, you can't just not think of the ramifications of having someone like this in the White House. It's sad. Okay. Now, let's go to corruption. Now, President Trump has famously promised to drain the swamp. Now, a lot of people thought, hey, great, we're going to get rid of this corruption. We're going to get the special interests. We're going to get the big donors out of the White House. I'm in favor of that. We're all in favor of that. A majority of the American people say, yes, corporations and the wealthy have too much influence on our political system. So if there's a politician or a non-politician that's running for office that's going to get rid of them, great. Okay, we can get behind that. Now, some of them even believed, well, hey, this guy, listen to what he's saying. He can't be bought. He cannot be bought. Well, it turns out, yes, he can. See, instead of draining the swamp decided to buy him off. And it was actually really, really easy. It only cost about over $100 million. Now, to show you how much money, and to really put this thing into context, I want to give you a comparison between Donald Trump and Barack Obama, okay, and how much money that they raised for their inauguration. That's just inauguration. That doesn't have anything to do with during their campaign. Okay, now, Barack Obama had set a record in 2009, raising $53 million to support his inauguration. Now, that inauguration was fairly large. Actually, it was one of the largest inaugurations. There was 1.5 million people there. Okay, great. So, now, that money, of course, came from lots of contributors nationwide. Now, why? Well, at the time, donations were capped at about $50,000. That's still a lot of money. Now, in the tradition of past inauguration, that $53 million also included millions of dollars from various special interest groups. Now, Barack Obama, he raised a lot of money during his campaign as well from the banks. So, don't misunderstand me here. I'm not absolving President Obama from taking money from big corporations and also being a neoliberal establishment candidate, because that's absolutely what he was. Even though I kind of miss him at this point. But anyway, now, let's see. Trump, however, is a little bit different. See, he raised, according to disclosure forms, he raised $107 million for his inauguration. Now, that's about twice of what Obama had raised for his. And unbelievably, he actually had even less donors than Obama had, about half the, or a big fraction, I should say, of the donors that Obama had. He had less, but he ended up getting more. Interesting. Now, Trump took $5 million from billionaire casino owner and Republican mega donor Sheldon Adelson. So, again, that's a lot of money. These are people who it's just some of the people that he's raised money from. The largest single inauguration donation ever. According to the Center for Public Integrity, others who gave at least $1 million included coal baron, Wall Street investors, there's the swamp, fast food CEOs, 3 major health insurance companies also contributed about $100,000 each. Energy interests contributed more than $8 million to the inauguration, according to a study done by USA Today. Kelsey Warren, the billionaire behind the Dakota Access Pipeline, which Trump decided to approve and now he's pushing through, gave him $250,000, ExxonMobil contributed $500,000 the week after Trump announced Rex Tillerson as his pick for Secretary of State. Oh, and look, along with that, look at what Trump's giving back to ExxonMobil. He's going to ease the sanctions on Russia so ExxonMobil can drill there and they can do this big oil deal, this multi-billion-dollar oil deal that Rex Tillerson and ExxonMobil and Vladimir Putin really, really wanted to do. Fun. So there's a little bit of hypocrisy here when it comes to President Trump. Not only did he blow out Barack Obama in fundraising for his inauguration, he did so with less small donors and more large special interest corporate donors. Now, those donors together, you know what we call them? We call them the swamp. That's the swamp. That's the swamp you're supposed to drain. To drain. No, they're draining all that money into you. That's what they're doing. Now, during his campaign, Trump, he ran on the fact that, hey, I'm not your standard politician. I give them money and they do what I want to do. I'm not that person. You can't own me. You can't buy me. Well, that turned out to be an absolute lie. It's pretty clear that from his cabinet picks that we've detailed on the show, most of them are Goldman Sachs guys or big corporate owners, CEOs. This is the wealthiest presidential cabinet in history. This has to show you that Donald Trump, when he said he drained the swamp, he didn't mean it. He didn't mean it. He was lying to you. He was lying to your face to get your vote. And you believed it. You chanted, drain the swamp, drain the swamp. Well, guess what? He filled the swamp. And look, on the show, we were telling you this. Okay, progressive, independent media. We were saying this. Corporate media, they're useless. They didn't say anything about that. They didn't talk about the corruption because they love the corruption. They bathe in this corruption. They get all this money from these super PACs to run ads. So you think they're going to talk about all the money that was raised in the inauguration? Absolutely not. But us in independent media, we were talking about it. We were saying Donald Trump is the swamp. He is the new establishment. He is out here. He is lying to you. We said it. All the way back in November, by the way. You had the Center for Public Integrity reporting that Trump's inaugural team had been selling access to the president in exchange for money, for giant sums of money. And though he didn't take money from lobbyists, he ended up taking money from wealthy individual donors who were now able to, thanks to McCutcheon, thanks to Citizens United, to be able to give them millions and millions of dollars in donations. And a lot of that money is also dark money. And of course, now Trump, since he's in office, he's been repaying them. He's been repaying his donors. Now, one of the things that a lot of these donors wants, he got $8 million for his inauguration from energy companies. Well, what's one of the first things that he tried to do? He removed much of Obama's climate regulations. Got rid of them. Gone. These were regulations on companies, which, by the way, are just rules to prevent them from screwing you over or dumping toxic coal ash into your lakes and streams. He got rid of those rules. And then, of course, there's Trump Care, which happened to be a complete disaster because nobody but special interests wanted that. Remember, the Republican voters that railed against Obamacare did so because they saw their premiums go up. They saw that, hey, man, I got to buy this insurance. I don't really want this insurance, and it's expensive as hell. Yeah, we're getting some help for it from the government. Some of us are, but others are falling into this donut hole where, boy, this insurance is expensive. We're not getting any help from the government. What do we do? I don't want to pay for this. I can't afford to pay for this high deductible. Well, a lot of these people, again, they're like, we don't like the ACA. You need to fix the ACA so we can have lower premiums. Well, what did Trump Care do? Well, Trump Care would have raised premiums, and we reported on this as well. The CBO released a report saying, yeah, Trump Care would raise premiums for everybody unless you're a wealthy 20-year-old. Okay? If you're a healthy 20-year-old or if you got a lot of money, it's not really going to impact you, okay? But more importantly, Trump Care would have affected the donors. And what would that have done to them? Well, it would have saved them millions of dollars. the 400 richest households would have saved an average of $7 million a year in taxes. That's why they wanted to repeal the ACA. It did nothing to what he actually promises people. Oh, we're going to cover everybody. It's going to be cheaper. We're going to have pre-existing conditions. We're going to cover all that stuff. All the promises that he made. And that's the bill that they came up with. That's the bill he tried to push through. It was not what the American people wanted. You want to look at what the American people want? Look at single payer. Or at least look at fixing the ACA. Which I think a real fix would be moving to a Medicare for all system, because everything else is a Band-Aid. And we know that. But the bottom line here is, he doesn't work for you. He works for his donors. Just like any other politician, he turned out to be in it for himself. He works for his donors. He's not going to drain the swamp. He was never going to drain the swamp, because at the end of the day, he is the swamp. Don't say we didn't warn you. Okay. All right, so now I'm gonna go after the Democrats now. I ain't done. I ain't done. Now, it didn't take long for Claire McCaskill to get back to attacking progressives and progressive policy. Now, this latest attack comes just after weeks after begging Bernie Sanders supporters to not primary her in 2018. Now, I remember reporting on a secret fundraiser, or private fundraiser, I should say, back in March, where McCaskill basically said, all of you who are Bernie supporters, I need you, I want you, I want to talk to you, I want you to be part of our effort. We can't get divided in a state like Missouri, or we're cooked. Well, it looks like you're going to be cooked, because not more than a couple of weeks after that, you decided to change your tune. And she did so by attacking free college tuition. Now, she argued that, hey man, we shouldn't have free college tuition because we can't pay for it. We just can't afford it. Can't afford it. She said, quote, free college tuition is a great goal, except it's really expensive. It's really expensive. And we are struggling over how we're going to pay in terms of what we have right now for Medicare. We can't just start having the government pay for everything. When people talk about that, and they point out countries where that happens, people are paying 70% of their income in taxes. Okay. Number one, that is fear-mongering bullshit that's not actually true. And number two, these are right-wing talking points. Oh, man, how are we going to pay for that? How are we going to pay for that? Well, that's funny. Number one, you didn't ask, how are we going to pay for that $300 million bomb we dropped on Afghanistan? Anybody ask how we're going to pay for that? How come you didn't ask? What about the missiles that we launched at Syria? How are we going to pay for that? Or what about the $50 billion in extra military funding in which the Trump budget plans to put towards the Pentagon? Or on that note, why do we even spend $600 billion on the Pentagon in the first place? We have a military that spends more than every other country combined. You ever ask how we pay for that? And let me get to the numbers here, all right? So she's against free, tuition-free education. Oh my God, it's so expensive, so expensive. How much is it going to be a year? It would cost $75 billion a year. And some estimates, it would actually be even less. Now, you know who already answered your question? Bernie Sanders, during the primary campaign. And how he would get that money, that $75 billion, is he would tax Wall Street speculation. Now, how it would work is that the tax would impact a very small number of incredibly wealthy, high-speed traders. Now, these traders, they use computer programs to do high volumes of trading within a fraction of a second. You know how much the tax would be? It would be incredibly small, like a 0.1% tax on every individual transaction. But since there are so many high-volume trades going on in small amounts of time, well, that tax ends up adding up to a lot of money. enough money to pay this to send everybody into a four-year university without having to rack up tons and tons of debt, thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. That's pretty good. Now, more than 1,000 economists have already endorsed this tax on Wall Street speculation, and around 40 countries throughout the world already have imposed this similar tax, but we have not done that in America. And you know what's funny? Those same 40 countries, or a lot of them, who do this financial transaction tax, or this speculation tax, they have tuition-free education. I'm just saying. They have it. Why can't we? It's because of people like Claire McCaskill. Her talking points are conservative Republican talking points, okay? And look, she's not the only one who used that. Hillary Clinton used that during the campaign as well. She went after progressive policies, calling them unrealistic and expensive. But actually, we're really one of the only few countries in the world that doesn't have a single-payer system or tuition-free higher education. What that means is that we're the odd ones out. We're the ones using the unrealistic and expensive system. Let me explain. In 2013, the federal government spent nearly $76 billion on higher education. We spend more already right now with the hodgepodge of different programs that we have. We spend more now on education than we would under the Bernie Sanders plan. $75 billion, we spend $76 billion right now federally. Do you know how much we spend in the states? $71 billion. And again, this is because of all the different tuition programs. You have Pell Grants, which take up a large chunk of that. Tax breaks, work study funding, etc., etc. That put together costs more, twice as much more than Bernie Sanders' tuition-free education plan. Why is it so expensive? Well, it's because what we're doing is that we're giving a lot of money out to expensive private for-profit institutions. At one point, for example, a Senate investigation found that the for-profit sector alone was taking 25% of all federal student aid money. These are for-profit institutions, places like ITT Tech and Trump University. You wonder why our system is so expensive and why it sucks? That's why. Now, instead of asking how we pay for a cheaper option, how about we start asking and finding out why our system, why we pay more for a system that still leaves millions of people with massive amounts of student loan debt when they are done. Why don't we start asking that question instead of how are we supposed to pay for it? How are we supposed to pay for it? No, how do we make it cheaper? And how do we expand opportunity to everyone so that they don't end up leaving college with a massive pile of debt, so they can actually get back into the economy, buy homes, houses, cars, etc. Now, here's the other problem with their argument, right? Now, she said, oh my God, some of these countries, yeah, they do it, but they pay 70% of taxes. Holy crap, you don't want to do that. Well, that is classic conservative fear-mongering. Now, and again, it's wildly unrealistic. It's not true. The highest tax rate out of the 34 countries in the OECD is Denmark. Now, Denmark has a tax just under 50%. That seems a little high, doesn't it? Well, to people in America, oh my God, how we got taxes almost 50%. Oh my God. Well, hold on there a minute. Denmark happens to be the happiest country in the world. Why? Because they have things like universal health care, they have free college, they have high wages, and that offsets higher taxes. In fact, you have Jeffrey Sachs, author of the United Nations World Happiness Report, which ranks the happiness of 156 countries and consistently places Denmark at or near the top of the list. He says, what we find when we study happiness around the world is that the definition is quite similar. So what makes Danes happy is the same thing that makes Britons happy, or Canadians, or people in the United States, Americans. People want to live well. They want to have money in their pocket and in the bank. They want to trust their government. They want to be healthy. Okay, well, if you have a good job, and that job happened to have required a good education, and you got that education without coming out of college with mountains of student loan debt, or if you have health care that allows you to see a doctor without worrying that you have to go bankrupt, well, it looks like you're going to end up being fairly happy of what's going on. Now, what she also ignores is that what you pay more in taxes in these countries, you end up saving in other areas. For example, you don't have deductibles. You don't have bloated insurance premiums to pay, right? These insurance premiums, again, I pointed out how inefficient they are, because what you're paying for is part of your premium goes to a health insurance CEO's profit margin. That's what they get for CEO bonuses for making lots of money. Now, you also, in these countries, don't have student loan payments going to for-profit servicers like Navient or Sallie Mae, which also, again, they service your debt, your student loan debt, and they make money off of it. This is a for-profit operation. Now, look, there's a place for private industry. Like government sneakers, bad idea. However, when you have societal needs like education and healthcare, well, those are not places for private industry. I don't believe that those are places because it's inefficient. Because these are the things that people need. It's a societal need. That is what we pay the government to do. To make sure that everybody has an education so that you have an educated workforce and a populace and a healthy workforce and a populace. That is one of the core functions I believe government is supposed to be about. Now, again, for-profit industry doesn't really have much of a place in there unless you're talking about, oh, you know, you want to sell a supplementary plan that fills in some of the gaps that isn't covered by government insurance. Okay, that's fine. Or, you know, if you really want to have a private school, okay, that's fine. Like, that's good for you. You can pay for it with your own money and not tax money. But prisons, that's another example where you should not have a profit margin, because that one is especially perverse. If prisons are based on a profit model, well, prisons, what are prisons there to do? They're there to hold people. They're there to imprison people for, you know, committing crimes. Well, if there's not enough criminals and you really want to fill those beds, well, you're going to start making things that weren't criminal before criminal in order to make a profit. It's a sick, perverse incentive. So that's another example of an industry that shouldn't be for profit, that should be a government-controlled industry. Now, but McCaskill is again sounding like she is Republican light. And it turns out that in a lot of these states, I mean, she's feeling the heat. Turns out these people, these Republican light Democrats, these blue dogs, they do not win re-election for most of the time. I mean, why vote Republican light when you could just vote for a Republican? And no progressive is going to support her because she's not progressive. And that is really worrying her. And yet, even though being as worried as she is and reaching out to the Sanders folks, she comes around and says and shows her true colors, that she is not a progressive, that she's basically a conservative. Now, there again, let me show you some of the numbers, for example, of during the primary. In the 2016 primary, Clinton beat Sanders by a very slim margin, winning by just over 1,500 votes. According to exit poll data, nearly 80% of voters 18 to 29 and over 60% of voters aged 30 to 44 voted for Bernie Sanders. So there is a large base of progressive support in Missouri that went for Bernie Sanders. These are young people. These are progressives. Younger people are often more progressive than older people. Ages 30 to 44. 45, of course, to 65 went more over towards Hillary Clinton. And the older that you got, the wealthier that you got, the more you went towards Hillary Clinton. Now, these progressives, I'm guessing they're not going to vote for Claire McCaskill. Pretty sure. No matter how much money the Democratic establishment decides to throw at her. And this is probably the most infuriating part of the story. Politico reported back on April 18th, there's a nonprofit controlled by allies of Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer that is spending $500,000 on radio ads backing Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill. Her re-election campaign broke a fundraising record during the first quarter of the year, pulling in $2.8 million more than any other senator up for re-election this year. That right there comes in stark contrast to the special election we just had in Kansas and the election that we had in Georgia, where the Democrats sat on their hands. There was a progressive Bernie-crat in Kansas that ran. And yet, what did we get from the DNC? Nothing. He made up a 22-point lead, lost by 6 points, in a place deeply conservative. He could have won if the Democratic Party had actually put in some effort. And maybe he wouldn't have won, but it might have been even closer, which might have rattled the Republicans even more. They were vulnerable. But instead of helping a progressive, they're putting all their money, almost $500,000, into Claire McFucking-Caskill. You've got to be kidding me. And to top it off, by the way, this is a dark money group. So, and if you can remember Claire McCaskill saying that Citizens United, these dark money groups, they're the worst Supreme Court decisions in my lifetime. And yet you have no problem taking money from them. Okay, great. So we know basically that Claire McCaskill reaching out to Bernie Sanders supporters was nothing but lip service. She tried pandering to them. And of course, none of us were buying at all what she was selling. So now here's what we're going to do, Claire, right? What we're going to do, we're going to primary your ass. And we're going to crush you. And that's it. And so go ahead and bring in your millions of dollars, which, by the way, again, could have been sent to progressives elsewhere. But the establishment will protect its own, and we've seen that. We'll go ahead and bring in your money, and we're going to bring in the people. Well, let's see who wins. We'll see you in 2018. Okay. I noticed I had a call there earlier. So if you if you're calling, stay on the line, and I will get to you in between segments. So if you want to, you can call back, and I will answer. Okay. All right. If not, man, we're already running out of time. I don't know if I should do this last story or not. I might, but I want to see who was on the line, because I really want to get some of your questions and comments for what and see what you guys are asking, what you're talking about today. That is, let's see, 989-796-4975. You want to call into the show? Feeling a little stuffed up today. So, all right. So the next story, though, that I do want to talk about is another Democratic challenger, this time going after Heidi Heitkamp. So before I get into that, I do want to make sure to take your call. So, all right, if you call during the segment, just wait until it's done. Fuck it, we'll do it live. In honor of our friend Bill O'Reilly. Fuck it, we're gonna do it live. We now have a primary challenger for Heidi Heitkamp. Oh, this will be interesting. Now, this challenger is a local firefighter and a former Sanders delegate named Dustin Peyer. Now, Peyer is is expected to formally announce his campaign against corporate Democrat Heidi Heitkamp today, actually, at a marijuana reform rally. So, oh, that's interesting. So, happy 420. Here comes Sanders Democrat going after Heidi Heitkamp. Now, what's interesting is he told WDAY the reason that he's running. He said, "I'm running for Senate against Heidi Heitkamp. Basically, in my opinion, on the Dem side, we have a really boring primary, and we can't allow that to happen anymore." So basically, this is a guy who's like, well, nobody else is going to run against her. Well, fuck it. I'm going to run against her. Well, let's do this. I kind of like that spirit. Now, he also noted that his campaign was about recognizing that over 60% of North Dakota caucused in favor of Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side. That's also important. Now, as far as his policies go, well, we'll get into at least what I know, because there's not a lot of information about him, to be honest. Now, some of his Sanders policies he actually might be in favor of, again, since he caucused for Bernie Sanders. Now, Pyre is a married father of 2 and a graduate of Washburn High School. Now, he said to WDAY, "I am for simpler government. I'm a big supporter of getting rid of the blue laws in the state. That kind of mentality." Now, he says, "I think the states are more powerful than the federal government. We should be reliant on our own laws and doing things on our own terms, and the state should trickle that down to the township level." So he seems like, at least when it comes to states' rights, he's a little bit more conservative on that. Basically saying, hey, we should make our own rules. Okay, that's not a bad thing. Now, he mentioned blue laws, and what the hell's a blue law? Well, apparently it's where you can't operate stores on Sunday. And there are, North Dakota seems to have some of these blue laws. Okay, well, that's very interesting. So, yeah, I would be in favor of getting rid of that. I actually had to look it up, which is crazy. Now, again, it's ridiculous, right? Now, he also said on policy, when it comes to health care, he is in favor of Medicaid for all. There was nothing on Medicare for all. I'd like to ask him about that. But he says Medicaid for all. He thinks the insurance companies have too much influence in politics. I agree with that. And that he's got a personal experience with Medicaid, and it was actually a good experience. He said that his son, Noah, which is 60 years old, was born with premature heart and lung problems. Noah's costs have been previously covered by Medicaid, which Payer describes as a helpful support that ought to be available to everyone. Okay, hey, great. Every child should have that opportunity and have these options. Okay, so that sounds like somebody, I believe, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, if he ever sees this, that he might be in favor of Medicare for all. Medicaid for all, great. Medicare for all, even better. So, now something else he's in favor of that we would agree on is campaign finance reform. Now, he's also attacked Heitkamp for taking big donations. At a national level, he argued that both Heitkamp and Representative Kevin Kramer, the Republican who also might seat that Senate seat, have both received donations affiliated from PACs affiliated with DTE Energy, Aetna, which is an insurance company, and other big donors. He says, do you think that when the same super PACs give to the same parties, do we have a two-party system? He said, proposing a $250,000 cap on the fundraising per election cycle for candidates. Now, he's running as a Democrat, but I think he's more of a nonpartisan. He's running on the nonpartisan, I believe, league, the NPL Democrats. So, okay. So, he's more of a, I guess, more of an independent than anything else. That makes sense. Now, that makes it think that he might be open to getting money out of politics completely. And if so, well, then that would be something for maybe the Justice Democrats to look into. Somebody for the Justice Democrats to look into. Now, he also argues that marijuana regulation should be left to the states and says that tax benefits of legalizing marijuana in hemp industries would be significant. Asked if he was running, just so Heitkamp could have a primary opponent, he added that it kind of started out that way, but said that voters are also unhappy with Heitkamp's support of some of Trump's nominees. He says as more people come out and say they're going to support me, it really isn't changing, or it's really changing. You start looking at the, there are people who aren't convinced the way she voted on Trump's nominees. Okay, so yeah, if you are against Trump's nominees, well, it would make sense. Because she has voted for more of Trump's nominees, I think, than anybody else. So, turns out that when you do that, people get kind of pissed. I mean, not only that, but people are angry at DAPL, which Heitkamp supports. People are angry at money in politics, again, which Heitkamp supports. And look, she's a very corporatist Democrat. Then it turns out that people don't like corporatist Democrats. People don't like corporatist Republicans either. Especially when it comes to the state level. Now, referring to Sanders supporters during the 2016 election, Pyre argued that those people need a voice. Well, I couldn't agree more. Now, I think he might get more support if he comes out a little clearer, a little stronger on some of Sanders' positions, and maybe he already has, and I just haven't seen that. But from what I see, he seems to be a lot better than Heidi Heitkamp. Now, a lot of people, outlets that have written about this, have said, oh, what a long shot candidate. Well, maybe. Or maybe not. Who knows? They always put out that narrative. Now, if you get support of, again, the Justice Democrats, and if you support Medicare for all, getting rid of money out of politics completely, then that might help you a lot. Which, again, he might have already said that stuff, and I just don't know about it. But it sounds like, to me, at least, and I could be wrong, that he might be open to these positions. We'll see. Now, he also says he plans on not taking any corporate money, but just doing a campaign by running on only small donations. And that, of course, I 100% approve of. So I think there's a little bit of promise here when it comes to this candidate. And I'm going to keep my eye on this guy. I'm going to see how this race progresses. And I think maybe if you live in North Dakota, you should also take a look at this guy. All right. Anyway. That's it. That's all I got. We're not. So no show tomorrow. We'll be back on Monday. So, and I'll let the patrons know. Patrons, of course, will get this full show today. Posted up after we're done with the live stream, so you can check it out at any time. And all right. So that's it. You guys have an awesome weekend. Hopefully you have a great 420. Love you guys. Thanks to the patrons. Thanks to those who are watching. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation.
And then they say, there's Donald Trump, an intellectual. Trust me, I'm like a smart person.